What is the meaning of the Hindu greeting, Namastê? In fact, usually you hear yoga advocates using that at the beginning of a yoga class. Or New Agers quite often in greeting each other will say, Namaste. Well, what does that mean? It means I bow to the divine in you. I bow to the divine in you. Is that a correct stance? Is that a correct theological view? Well, for a Hindu, it would mean something quite different than a Christian. A Christian greeting another Christian would believe that God is within both of their hearts, but not in the same way that a Hindu or a New Ager believes. See, it's a different worldview. It's based on a different belief system altogether. It's based on pantheism. Pantheism is the idea that everything is a manifestation of God. It comes from two root words, pan, theos, all is God. And most Hindus, over 50% of Hindus, believe in what is called Advaita Vedanta Hinduism. That's the belief of this particular mindset that you are a manifestation of God. I am a manifestation of God. Everything in the material universe is a manifestation of God. The universal self, the oversoul, called Brahman in Hinduism. And so, if I say Namaste, I'm acknowledging that you are God in manifestation. I am God in manifestation. And not only that, it's an acknowledgement of an individual evolution toward Godhood, that I'm acknowledging you are a potential God or goddess, and that I am a potential God, because as my soul evolves through reincarnation, through thousands of rebirths, eventually I come into this deityship, if you will. Well, of course, as a Christian, I do not believe that. And so, even though I appreciate the kind gesture, the slight bow, the palms together, and the greeting, Namaste, I couldn't come into agreement with that greeting without actually verifying or validating that belief system. Let me show you a little bit more about the basis of belief behind that practice. Swami Muktananda was a very popular and charismatic guru back in 1970 when I studied yoga and taught it at 4 universities and ran a yoga ashram. Thousands upon thousands of Westerners flocked to India to hear him teach and to hopefully get what they called an awakening of the Kundalini, which is a supposed swift way or quick way of coming into God consciousness. And supposedly, Muktananda had the power to just touch you and it would awaken that power. Now, I have a different interpretation of that myself now. But first and foremost, I want you to hear a quote from Muktananda. He said, "Kneel to your own self, honor and worship your own being. Meditate on your own self. God dwells with you as you." See what an absolutely polar opposite that is to a biblical point of view. I have a dear friend who is now a born-again believer in the Lord Jesus Christ, who actually lived in Swami Muktananda's ashram in India for over 2 decades, trying to achieve what is called God consciousness, which is this full awareness that you are God. That's absolutely the opposite of the truth. Let me show you the biblical point of view. In Psalm 8, verses 4 and 5, in the New King James Version, it says, "What is man that you are mindful of him, and the son of man that you visit him? For you have made him a little lower than the angels, and you have crowned him with honor and glory." Now, unfortunately, I do not believe that is the best translation of the original Hebrew. If you'll notice on the screen, right after the word angels is the Hebrew word Elohim. Well, Elohim is translated over 2,000 times into the word God, and over 200 times into the plural word gods. But it's only translated angels 1 time in the Old Testament. I believe it's actually a mistranslation. Let me take you to a version, the NAU version, that actually renders it as I believe it should be rendered. What is man that you take thought of him, and the Son of Man that you care for him? Yet you have made him a little lower than God. That's what the Bible teaches. You crown him with glory and honor, but you've made him a little lower than God. Yes, man is on a high pinnacle as far as a comparison with all the other aspects of creation. And certainly he's on a level that is preeminent compared to other aspects of the creation, other beings, other things God has made, the angels, the cherubim, the seraphim, etc. But the Bible never says we are God. If you make that statement, you're making a very bold statement, because if you say we are God, that includes the most wicked and the most righteous of the human race. It includes the Adolf Hitlers and the Billy Grahams. It goes from one extreme opposite to the other. And if you attribute divinity to mankind, you must attribute sinfulness to God. Because if we are all God, then everyone in this world, the robber, the thief, the rapist, the murderer, they are manifestations of God, just like the saintly and godly people. So that doesn't even make sense logically, much less theologically. So we've been made a little lower than God. What does that mean? Because in the Christian worldview, if you are born again, at that point, the Spirit of God enters into you. Quite the opposite is the Hindu belief that there's a spark of divinity within every human being. So to find God, you look within. Well, I tried that. I tried that passionately. I tried that very dedicated, consecrated to all the various practices like chanting mantras and meditating and reading all the Eastern scriptures and everything that was a yogic necessity in order to achieve this mindset, this revelation, this self-realization. And I came to the conclusion that it didn't work, especially the day I encountered the Lord Jesus Christ. And when I invited him to come into my heart, for the first time in my life, the Spirit of God entered into me. And I knew, wait a second, this is different. Because only if you believe that God exists apart from the physical universe can he remain untainted by the evil that is here. If he's apart from the physical universe, then the source of evil in this world is not God. The source of evil in this world is, number one, a fallen angel named Satan, and number two, a fallen man named Adam, who passed on that fallen state to all of his offspring. Otherwise, God would have to have evil attributed to him. And that's a completely unacceptable way of looking at it. Now, let me show you the Christian worldview. And again, this is dependent on the experience of being born again. Jesus said, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him. The New Age view is that there is a Christ nature within every human being. We are all potential Christ. We are all potential Buddhas. But Jesus, quite the opposite, said, I stand at the door and knock, and if any man open the door, I will come into him. And so there's a definite point where Jesus, who is the image of the invisible God, the only time that God was ever manifested in this world, and then he comes into your heart, that's when you receive the indwelling presence of God. And he expresses that in John chapter 14, verse 23, which I'm about to quote now. He said, if anyone loves me, he will keep my word. And my Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our home with him. There's a huge difference between God making his home with you. Your heart becomes his temple, his dwelling place, and the claim, the audacious claim that you are actually God in manifestation. Only Jesus was God manifested in the flesh. He desires to make his home in you, but you cannot rob him of a position and a status that only he can claim.